Board of Selectmen's meeting to order Wednesday, March 15, 2023. First item, would everyone please stand and join the board in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To inform everyone that at 7:10 this evening, we have a public hearing, so at 7:10, the board will vote to go into public hearing. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes from March 1st, 2023. What is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes of February 15th, 2023.
Be March 1st, correct?
March 1st.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, omissions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 I abstain. So we have two yes and one abstention. Thank you. Public comment. Anyone in the audience who would like to address the Board of Selectmen with anything that is not on this evening's agenda? Sure. Could you please state your name for the record?
Gene Baker.
What can we do for you?
Thank you for being here and allowing, Gene, how are you? Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I do have a question with respect to the agenda itself. And it appears that the fire district, water district will be here tonight. And we're wondering if the expansion of the fire district is part of that agenda, or if it's something that we could discuss at this time, or if you have any information with respect to its status or anything that could help us out.
I'll ask Superintendent John Barrett of the Water District. Will residents be able to ask questions in regards to the legislation that's been filed recently?
There are,
Could you come out, please? I'm sorry. Appreciate it. For the viewers.
There are 3 members of management that make up the district, as well as 3 board members. I have not been in discussion whatsoever in regards to the lawsuit, any litigation, or anything else. So I'm really not at liberty to make a comment on that at this time.
Okay, thank you. So if any resident would like to address the board, they can do it during this public comment. And I would recommend also to attend the next Prudential meeting.
Thank you. Before I came here, I had a long list of talking points and grievances. I'm going to try to make it short because there's other people I think that want to speak on this issue. And I think I can cut to the chase of this entire issue. I don't believe anybody was on the board here in 2007, 2008, but an identical piece of legislation, pretty much identical. There was an attempt to pass a piece of legislation to expand the fire district to encompass the whole town. Representative Bosley forwarded it. As a result, there were concerned citizens, a large number, that went to the Prudential Committee and filed their grievances. And at that time, that piece of legislation ended up being pulled as a result of the grievances. Now, probably the critical role or the critical piece of information that goes along with this expansion is Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 79. Okay, Mass General Law 4879. And what this law does, it defines the method by which districts, fire districts, can expand. Initially, I don't believe that the select board back at that time period was aware of this. And as this progressed, they became aware. And at that time, they asked for the assistance of town council to render a legal opinion. And I have that with me in a document dated January 14th, 2008. And if it's okay to just kind of give you a short, I don't want to necessarily have to read the whole thing, but it's 3 short paragraphs, and I could pass that along to you so you could see it. But to sum it up, the first paragraph indicates that town council was approached by the board at that time requesting guidance on the expansion of the fire district. The next paragraph, town council discusses that he looked at appropriate statutes, primarily Chapter 48, Section 79, which states that for the fire district to expand, they need to have a meeting called for that purpose and receive a petition from all of the registered voters from outside of the district. And at that point, then they can consider whether they want to expand or not. At that time, they had not received the petition, which is why they were trying to skirt the law, which is there to prevent citizens of both within the water district and outside of it from being disenfranchised. The public is afforded the opportunity to express their desires on this issue under Mass General Law. And this was being taken away from the people of Adams at the time. This is exactly what we're facing here today. And at that time, town council rendered his legal opinion to the board. And this legal opinion is a large reason why it failed the previous time, in which I believe it should fail this time. And basically the last paragraph says, therefore, it would appear that if the fire district receives a petition defining the limits of the territory to be annexed, signed by a majority of the resident voters inhabiting the area to be annexed, at a meeting convened by the fire district, the annexation may proceed. And at that point, they did not have that. And at that point, the bill was removed by Representative Bosley, along with a bunch of other issues involving the bill itself, which calls on the fire department. And believe me, I have no issues with the Alert Host Company. I'm friends with a lot of them, work alongside of them. They do a magnificent job. This is not about them. This is about a decision to circumvent Mass General Law and deprive people of their say. And that's an issue. And if this bill legislation was to pass, it takes effect upon the point that it passes. And without getting into the needs of the people outside of the district, I don't believe there's any intention to supply water or lighting outside that district. And I don't believe that the fire department has provided their people, their firefighters, with the adequate equipment to protect property outside of that. They don't have tankers, and they haven't trained in tankers that they haven't purchased. So I don't know if you need any of these documents. There's precedent.
You can
there's
present
continual
it to the
precedent.
board, that's fine. I'll take that.
Okay. And also within here is examples of precedent that has been established over 150 years from the Prudential Committee that shows that when they're presented with a proposition to expand the district, that it is always, and you can see that there, that it has always been done over 150 years with the ability to provide water. And obviously, water is essential for fire protection. But I thank you for your time. I think there's other people
I
that would
just
like
have
to
a
speak.
question.
Sure.
Who rendered that decision? Who was the town council at the time?
Mr. St. John,
Okay, Mr. St. John, okay.
the third,
Thank
I
you.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a member of the board.
I'm sorry, I don't
That's okay.
remember it, but
This means I've been here a long time, that's all.
I'm
I
here again
remember,
too.
so I'm not gonna get into it, and the Prudential Committee is not here to defend or whatever, so, but you did mention that our legal counsel did render a decision, so that's why I'll take this and determine what, if there's anything. Let's, we are at 7:00. I guess that's what we'll do. It'll be 7:10, and we'll go into a public hearing. So we will need a motion from the board to go to the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to go into the public hearing at 7:10.
Could you please state the reason?
And the reason is to have a public
our CDBG grants that we're hoping to wrap up this spring. We're required to have a public hearing at the beginning of the grant process, basically to set the agenda for the grant and what programs we'd like to cover and what we'd like to fund. And then we're required to have a second public hearing, roughly halfway through the grant process or towards the tail end as we're trying to close out, to sort of as a check-in with the public and to review the town's performance on the grant. So we're combining two of our grants, or two of the grants we've received into one public hearing tonight. So we're here to discuss the FY19 CDBG grant and our FY20 COVID Micro Enterprise, CDBG COVID Micro Enterprise grant that we received. CDBG program, or Community Development Block Grant program, is set up to help meet one of, or several national objectives. These include the elimination of slum and blight, benefits to providing benefit to low and moderate income persons and households, and meeting an urgent community need. That last national objective is very rarely used, if at all, especially here in Massachusetts. That's what I gather. But the two grants that we received, the FY19 and the COVID Micro Enterprise, allowed us to do a lot of really good work in town. We continued our housing rehab program. We were able to renovate Russell Field, and we were able to provide some enterprise grants to basically low and moderate income business owners to help them to help alleviate the impacts of COVID. Assistant Director Becky Ferguson can kind of get into details and discuss those a little bit further, but that's kind of the the 10,000-foot view, and she can talk a little bit more about the details of each one of the grants, the important work or good work that we were able to do with that, and discuss some of the next steps for closing out the grant.
Hi. So the FY19 grant funded Russell Field and housing rehab. The budgets for those, it was an $800,000 grant, $470,000 was designated for Russell Field, and $236,000 was designated for housing, and the rest was administrative costs. The Russell Field project closed down we finished it up about a year and a half ago. It included a new backstop, drainage, grading, turf, a new tennis court, a fitness center or fitness equipment, and some new ADA entrances throughout the project, and it came in on budget. We also put in some conduit for the overhead lights to prep them for LED lights whenever we have the ability to install those. And the housing grant was slow getting off the ground because of the pandemic and costs and the lack of availability of contractors. So a whole host of reasons. But we did have been able to complete 5 projects in total to date. We have 2 more under contract now, and we hope to wrap them up in the coming months and close that out completely. For the Micro Enterprise COVID grant, that was a special cycle, sort of out-of-cycle grant program that they did. We applied as the lead applicant for the Northern Berkshire Regional Grant. We applied in conjunction with BRPC, and it was geared towards micro enterprise businesses, so 5 or fewer employees, who experienced a loss because of the pandemic and who were owned by low to moderate income individuals. So it was pretty restrictive, and we did end up giving out 15 grants to businesses in the Northern Berkshires. The towns that were covered, I don't think we gave grants on each of these towns, but the towns that were eligible were Adams, Cheshire, Clarksburg, Dalton, Florida, Hancock, Hinsdale, Lanesboro, near Ashford, Peru, Savoy, Williamstown, and Windsor. And that grant's closed now, and we're just wrapping up the paperwork with the administrators over at CDBG. That's it. unless you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
I have one. How many businesses, small businesses, got money from the micro enterprise CDBG program?
15 businesses.
15 in Adams? Good.
Not just in Adams, all through
How
the
many
northern
in the
Berkshires.
town of Adams?
In the town of Adams, I think in the town of Adams, it was 3 or 4. I'd have to go back and check.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I remember when they were going through this, the application process was really rigid, and it discouraged people from doing it.
It was a difficult program to administer. It had challenges all over the state. We did extensive outreach and just weren't able to find many applicants that could fit the rigid guidelines, unfortunately. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Is that amen for the,
I believe that's it. There's no
Public-
vote that's required of the board.
there's no vote? Okay,
So it's basically just a check-in.
okay, great. Are there any questions, concerns from the audience that would like to address the board? Okay. Hearing none, can I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved?
Motion by Howard,
I'll second that.
second by Joe. Any further?
Meant public hearing,
Public hearing, what did I say?
executive session.
Whatever, I don't know. I'm still reading something. Yes, from public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous. All right, thank you. All right, now we're on to new business. The first item is review and approve farmland of local importance designation. Is that Eamon?
So I believe the board last discussed this potential farmland of local importance designation about a year ago or so now, maybe even a little bit longer. It's just a refresher. This farmland of local importance designation recognizes the locally soils that are locally important to agriculture. Already, there's this kind of recognition at the national level. There's prime, what's called prime farmland, and at the state level, there's soils of statewide importance. But at the local level, there's no such designation. So why it's important? When farmers want to preserve their land, they can sometimes seek outside funding to help enable that. And the percentage of these important soils can become important as the higher the percentage of important soils on the property, the higher the priority is for potential land preservation or farmland preservation. Preserving farmland obviously has many benefits to the community. It helps ensure that food is produced locally and in town, and also contributes to our local rural and scenic character. So as I said, the board last discussed this about a year ago, and directed the Community Development Department to get a little bit more information about the impacts of the designation. So since then, in that year, we've had BRPC help out with some GIS analysis, looking into the topic a little bit more. And also in that time, our Agricultural Commission was reformed. At the Agricultural Commission's last meeting a few weeks ago, the commission members heard from Al Averill, USDA soil scientist, as well as Sarah Gardner, who's the chair of the Williamstown Agricultural Commission. They both discussed the topic with the commission members, and afterwards, the Agricultural Commission here voted unanimously to recommend that the Board of Selectmen adopt this farmland of local importance designation. To summarize some of the work that the Regional Planning Commission did for us, they just did a GIS analysis, essentially looking at how many acres of soils or how many acres of land will be impacted by the designation. In the packet that was handed out, I think on the second page, there's a little map that shows where some of those areas are. They tried to look, at the extent of land that would be impacted. They also tried to see whether that land is, already preserved through, say, an APR or agricultural preservation program, or if it's protected by what's called Chapter 61, which is a current use tax program. Chapter 61 doesn't provide a permanent land protection, but in practice, it tends to be a long-term protection of land and helps keep land in farming use. Yeah, Howard?
By lowering the tax rate of that property?
Yes, it's a tax incentive.
Okay.
So they looked at the extent of that. What they found is essentially a lot of farmland in town is already, or that would be impacted by this designation, is either already protected by APR currently or is already enrolled in Chapter 61. What they found basically boils down to, I think, a few hundred acres that could potentially take advantage of the designation and are already permanently protected or long-term protected through one of those programs. Needless to say, what they found is that I don't think there's going to be a landslide of land being removed from potential future development or from or being put into one of these conservation programs. But that's not to say that it couldn't benefit some farmers in town. I think there's still folks that would take advantage of it for certain. So that's my brief synopsis of it. We do have Sonia McWhirter, our Agricultural Commission Chair, here. Sonia, I don't know if you want to say anything about this or.
I think you got it pretty covered.
Thanks. But yeah, so at their last meeting, the Agriculture Commission did discuss the topic and ultimately recommended that the board do approve this designation. If the board were to adopt the farmland of local importance designation tonight, we would work with Al Averill, who you've all spoken to before. He would just have to draft up sort of a sheet that formalizes the soils that would be included in the designation. And I think, John, you would have to sign off on it, and that's about it.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Howard, you got anything?
I do not.
Joe?
I just think that it's a worthwhile program. As was mentioned, I think there's only 500 acres possible that would fall under this umbrella. And let it be known that an individual who is a landowner has the right to sell his property, but this gives them the option if their land is dear and near to them, that they want to put it in preservation. And a good example is orchards, and we have a large orchard here in town. The soil isn't of prime importance, but because there's a crop that is grown on it, that puts it in a category that is land of local importance.
Right.
Just an example, but I just think that we got off on the wrong foot when we initially discussed this, because as I mentioned, I think that people thought that, it would take away developable land, but once again, if you own land, you can sell it, so it doesn't mean anything if they want to sell it outright. So I think, in my opinion, I think it's a worthwhile program. There's 20 communities now in Berkshire County that are in this program, so.
Yeah, thanks for making that point. I meant to make that myself. I think when we had discussed this last year, almost a year ago, I think at that point in time, 3 or 4 communities had adopted, or 2, not many at all. And at this point, well over half the municipalities in Berkshire County have adopted it, so.
Okay. Anyone else from the audience who would like to speak? Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the farmland agricultural program described on the document produced by the USDA dated November 2021.
Motion by Howard, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Joe. Thank you to the Agricultural Commission for investigating this, along with Eamon and your team, and Joe for originally bringing this idea forward. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Next on the agenda is review and approve Council on Aging Advisory Board bylaws. Jay, you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Sarah's here.
Oh, seriously, oh, there you are.
She just appears right on call.
You have a little bit of a sinus cold, so if you can't understand me, just ask me to repeat myself. So the board, the advisory board of the Council on Aging did go back based on our conversation when we reviewed this at one of the previous select board meetings. And we did add a section C to Article 5 Governance 5-1. And so section C states, once the advisory board has voted to remove a member, the name will be submitted to the town select board for a final vote on removal of said member from the ACOA advisory board. So we did add that based on recommendation from town council and the board. And then the only other change we had made was in Article 7, duties and responsibilities of officers, Section 7-1. Section B, all officers shall be elected annually at the scheduled July meeting of the advisory board. We changed that from June to July.
Okay, and Attorney St. John has reviewed these bylaws and agrees to them.
Yes.
correct? Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Council on Aging Advisory Board bylaws, the revision date, March 23.
Motion by Howard, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Any further discussion?
Just a comment, I'm glad that you did it. It's overdue, and this lays the groundwork for the future.
Thank you very much,
Yep.
Joe.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Thank you. Okay, we have, next is ratification of appointment of Benjamin Akista to the Council on Aging Advisory Board.
You got it. They're in there. Do you need them?
Yeah, did you want to read those, or?
No, Sarah. I can if you want.
No, that's okay. I got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Dear Jay and Select Board members, subject to Select Board's ratification, we'd like to recommend Adams resident Benjamin Acquista be appointed to the vacant position on the Adams Council on Aging Advisory Board. During our meeting on March 6th, a vote was held and unanimously approved to make said recommendation to the Adams Select Board. Ben has co-owned and operated local business, The Daily Grind, for the past 25-plus years and was a former director of the Adams Youth Center. He is looking for an opportunity to give back to the town of Adams, since this town has provided a sense of community and support to him and his business. We would be honored to have Ben join the Adams COA Advisory Board. If any additional information is needed regarding this request, please don't hesitate to ask. Respectfully, Sarah Fontaine.
What is the board's pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to ratify the appointment of Benjamin Acquista to the Council on Aging Advisory Board.
Motion by Howard, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Any further discussion?
He makes a mean veggie omelet.
Anything else?
Yeah, I would just like to say I like when he says the opportunity to give back to the town of Adams.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Next, we have ratification of appointment of Thomas Dubus to the Council on Aging Advisory Board. Sarah?
Yep. Dear Jay and Select Board members, subject to the Select Board's ratification, we'd like to recommend Adams resident Thomas Dubus be appointed to the vacant position on the Adams Council on Aging Advisory Board. During our March meeting, a vote was held and unanimously approved to make said recommendation to the Adams Select Board. Tom has been a funeral director at Pechoric Funeral Home here in Adams for over 23 years. He has a unique perspective on the lives and needs of older adults in our community and will help the COA serve them better as a member of our board. In addition, he has been a member of the Adams Lions Club and co-operator for the Adams Community Bank for over 20 years each. He would be a valued addition to the Adams COA Advisory Board. If any additional information is needed regarding this request, please don't hesitate to ask. Respectfully, Sarah Fontaine.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to ratify the appointment of Thomas Dubus on Aging Advisory Board.
Motion by Howard, do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Joe, any further discussion?
Yeah, just a question. How did you get these two? Did you reach out or?
So we were kind of throwing around a few names at one of our previous advisory board meetings, and two existing board members had suggested these gentlemen and had reached out to them as well.
Howard, anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, unanimous. Thank you. Next, on the new business, we have Fire District project updates. We have John Barrett, Water Superintendent. John?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. I guess I'll start out with our, what's on the agenda, our ISO. So if you guys are not aware, it's Insurance Service Office. This office evaluates our fire protection, and essentially it goes back to insurance coverage for people's fire protection rates. Every 5 years, this evaluation's done. 60% of the evaluation is accredited through the fire department. 40% of that is my scoring for distribution and our maintenance on hydrants, hydraulic analysis. So we're in the middle of that. That should be, I think it's going to actually go out to the insurance companies. The deadline for us is January 17th of 2024 to see what the rates currently right now. We had a rate regression, but we're really close to getting that back. We're just hammering out some details. For the last 3 years, I have been doing flow monitoring when we're doing our flushing for the year, trying to acquire the information for how much each hydrant can flow. And so what you're going to probably be seeing soon is we're going to take that data that we've been doing 3 years. I'm going to average that out. We also have what is called a hydraulic model. So a hydraulic model, I put together a couple years with our engineers, and essentially it's a computer model with the inputted data of all of our pressure, and we do tests at different hydrants, and they can essentially calculate the fire flow at each hydrant. So currently right now I just put that out to see if we can run a hydraulic model. So pretty soon, because as you're aware, we have a volunteer fire department. A lot of other companies come in here, and so I think to increase our efforts in fire protection, I'd rather have all the hydrants color-coded to NFPA code. We're probably going to be pretty close to doing that this year, so you'll start seeing, I don't know really how I'm going to do it, but you're going to start seeing markers go on all of our hydrants, and that's going to essentially let everybody know, that's a firefighter who knows NFPA code, how much water is going to go out of the hydrant. So it's,
What's FPA?
National Fire Protection, don't quote me on that. It's a firefighting, it's the firefighting code.
It's a rating for fire.
Firefighters code, correct. So that's something that we're working on, and we're trying to put that together, and we'll see how that goes. I'm fairly confident we'll maintain the rating that we had before, which is a really good rating. But we got a couple more months out of us to get that situated. Any questions?
Yeah, could you explain for the homeowner who pays for fire insurance
Yes.
what the implications of that are?
So if there's a rate regression, I believe what you would see is the insurance company will start.
What do you mean by a rate regression?
Rate regression. So every town is classified by a classification.
Okay.
So if I remember correctly, I think we were a 4x and we got moved to a 3x.
Is that a good or bad?
No, so it's gone down. The classification's gone down, so it's bad, really. Essentially, it's gone down. So which means rates may go up. We're only a couple points from getting it back up there, but I think what's happening is, it's just harder to maintain the rating that we had. By no means.
Why is that? What's going on that makes it more difficult to maintain?
I just think the all the scoring, the evaluations
Okay.
are more in-depth than they used to be.
Okay, so the criteria is getting tougher.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing. You know, the rating that we're gonna go down to isn't a bad rating by any means. I believe we will be matched with our neighbors in North Adams. I remember talking to our former chief about this, it's Steve, you know, about our rating. So, you know, we'll see. I spoke with Sarah Chafee from the ISO, and she said we were really close to getting back to where we were. So I'm fairly confident we'll be able to maintain that rating, but time will tell.
In the last fire, the big one that was here
Yes.
downtown, I understand it went very well. I mean, there's a tremendous draw on the demand on the water, and you maintain pressure.
It did. So, you know, when something happens, I essentially respond to every fire. It comes through on my phone, and there's a reason for that. Again, we have volunteer firefighter, which they're excellent in their job. But this system is complicated in this town because of the fact that we have so many pressure zones. So it's always good to have that there, and you know, we have a pump system, so these pumps run on automation, and we all know how automation can be. So it's always good to have a human there watching and learning what's going on, and so that I can prepare and pump water into town or not pump water into town, but I can see what the system's doing. So, you know, and communicate with the guys that are there, you know, and because again, it's difficult when you have multiple communities fighting a fire. Some of these people can come in and they don't know our system like our guys do. You know, so it's important to have that there, again, which is why I kind of want to start marking these hydrants in a NFPA code.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on what Howard said. I went to that fire, I didn't want to go right during the height of it.
Yep.
Because I didn't want to, you know, be an impediment. But I asked that same question, they said that the pressure was really good. And
Yeah.
it's pumping uphill too.
Yeah, we had, so in preparation of that, we have a tank that provides fire protection. You know, and so when the pumps aren't on, the fire protection is maintained by the tank. That's what all the water. And so here, it's unique because of the fact that our water comes into town from Cheshire, and the tank is not in the middle, which ideally where you would want it, but it's all the way on the other side of town. So water has to travel from that side of town to where our fire actually was. And then me knowing that and trying to provide extra protection to the whole town while they're using that demand, it's good to fire up the wells and then to watch the tank level. I know how much water they're using, so if I can see the tank dropping, I can increase our pumping in from Cheshire. And that's exactly what I did while everybody was fighting the fire. You know, I was in the background running the SCADA system and watching all the pumping in the town.
So, John, I just want to be clear. This is, if you were to paint the fire hydrants,
System, it's 3 pages, so yes, correct. Ideally, you know, so we got extra points for having a hydraulic model. You know, I think we may have been one of the first communities in this area to develop a hydraulic model. You know, and then color coding the hydrants is just
So to be
another
clear,
step in the right direction.
The hydraulic model is an engineering tool so that we know, given a certain demand from firefighting, what the overall response of the system is
Correct,
going to be.
exactly, correct. So what the hydraulic model does is it just doesn't see what a hydrant will flow. It will base what the hydrant will flow and what we can maintain for fire suppression demand based on our worst case scenario. So for me, that would be our maximum day demand. So as the town is utilizing water on its maximum day, which for us is usually around 800,000 gallons a day, how much water is left over to fight a fire? And that's how we construct and we can tell. We utilize our maximum day demand to figure out what the flow of each hydrant would be. So worst case scenario, that's the worst case scenario. Most often, times than not, it's better than what the hydraulic model is going to run.
Got it. It's worst case.
Right, it's the worst case scenario based on my maximum day demand from whatever year I inputted the data. And so we have this leak detection program. You guys see us all going around listening to these hydrants and doing all this leak detection. We do this twice a year. That helps minimize that demand. So leaking water is still demand that the system is using, and that means there's less available fire protection.
Unaccounted for water.
You got it. You got it. So that's the other side of it. So, you know, it's always a fighting battle. We do it twice a year just to make sure the system is up to snuff, and it helps us with our MDD, maximum day demand. All set?
Good.
Okay, we'll move on to the East Orchard tank repairs. So our East Orchard tank, I am going to have to take offline. I wanted to wait till school is out. I still have a lot of people to line up to make this happen, but what you're probably going to see is, you know, you're going to take a 500,000 gallon tank offline. That is going to affect, you know, obviously East Orchard Terrace.
Can you give us some background why it's going offline?
So it's got to go offline because there is a mixer that was installed in there from the factory, and there was freezing in there, and the mixer that was mounted on the wall has broken it off now, and so the divers.
This is the mixer to prevent it from freezing.
Yeah, you're right.
Stir the water so it doesn't get stagnant.
Right. So what happened
the water,
was
you gotta
this
dump
thing exactly. So we have an electronic one in their electrical packs mixing system in there now. We're still having problems with the tank freezing. There's damage in the tank of this big pipe that goes up, and it is now laying in the bottom of the tank. There's no way for the divers to remove this without taking the tank offline. Also, while the tank is offline, we have what's called, there's anodes that are in these tanks that protect it from corrosion. And the anodes that we have in the tank, we just replaced them a little while ago, and now the anodes also are damaged. So now we're going to be putting all new anodes in it, taking all that equipment, damaged equipment off, and getting that out. But in the meantime, we are not going to have the 500,000 gallon tank that provides the water when the pumps are off to the system. It also provides fire protection. So in the background, we are going to be working, me and John, Chief Pansecki, very closely. You know, when we put this out, I'm going to be putting a water conservation in that area, in the area that's going to be affected by this, to minimize water use. We will now be running pumps 24/7 to maintain pressure in the system. However, we're not going to have that available fire protection anymore because the 500,000 gallon tanks will be down. I'm planning on probably a week.
Can I ask a detailed question? Why, you're going to do this in the warmer months, right, when there's no freezing problem?
Correct.
So why can't the divers do it if you take if you take the mixer's not working and...
So this mixing system that was installed from the factory from Aquastore,
Yeah.
It's hard mounted on the wall, and it's a big, like 12-inch pipe. And so that pipe is the weight of it is why. So the only way to get this pipe out is to drain the water, open the access port that's on the ground, and pull the pipe out.
Got it.
And so that's what's going to happen. And that's the only way to get this thing out of the ground because, you know, you got to remember, I don't know, that tank is pretty tall. So it's a long ways down to try to move. You just can't physically get that pipe out.
Yep.
Have you seen this failing in time?
It has, it's been down for a while, you know, it's been laying down there on the ground, but it's just, I need to address it needs to go out, and now we have damage with these anodes. So last year, the anodes were fine, this year, they're not, so, you know, we just need to address that too. So we're gonna be replacing all the internals in there all at once and be done with it. And hopefully, after this is done, hopefully, you know, we can put the tank back in service and we'll never have to, I'm hoping that we'll never have to take it offline again. It's pretty stressful.
So,
that-
oh, go ahead, Joe.
Is that a double wall tank?
It's not, no, it's not double wall, it's a specially built, you know, structure from Aquastore, and essentially it's plated. It's all these plates that
I
they
know
just
what it
built,
is,
you
yeah.
know, bolt together, and then the inside is actually glass lined. Yes, yep, yeah, it's
What year
glass
did that
lined.
go in, John?
Excuse me?
What year did that go in?
Oh, boy, I was actually in North Adams and came here when they, I don't remember, it's probably, I'd have to say maybe 15 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah, it's probably pretty close.
So to get some details of this, it's going to impact the residents of the community. So you say an estimated 1 week in the spring. Can you get any more definitive than that? Is it any month or?
I have
just-
to.
yeah, okay.
Well, so what I have to do is I have to get all the people that, you know, the Aquastore, essentially. I have to, these guys travel all over United States, so I have to get them scheduled in, and just get all my, you know, everything in a line and see when it's gonna work and when I can get these guys in here to do the work.
So what will be the impact to the homeowner? Will it be more East Orchard? Will it be
No, so-
townwide or?
It's gonna be Orchard Street from Glen Street all the way to Hoosick Valley High School, including Hoosick Valley High School. Nobody's gonna probably know the difference that anything is going on, honestly. The tank creates pressure based on head of the water. And so when that's gone, our variable frequency drive pumps are just gonna be maintaining the head. So I don't think anybody's gonna know any difference. However, you know, just to be on the safe side, what I'm gonna wanna do is put in a water restriction in this area to minimize restriction, water use, to minimize the wear and tear on my pumps now that I'm gonna be having to run on them 24/7 to create pressure that the tank would normally make.
Would you think it'd be good timing to do that when school isn't in?
I wanted to do it when school is not in, because that's gonna reduce my demand. So this tank, on a normal day, has got about 33,000 gallons demand. That's what usually is coming out of this tank. So now my pumps one pump does 260 minutes, 2 of them, you know, normally we'll just be running that. So, you know, based off that demand, give or take, that's about 23 gallons a minute. Most of the demand is usually when everybody's awake. There's nothing there at night, you know, so the pumps are more than ready to be able to handle that kind of demand. I would just wish to be on the safe side.
Any impact to fire protection?
Drastically, yes, yes. Because now, with the 500,000 gallons sitting in the tank, we can flow 1,000, 1,500 gallons a minute out of any hydrant. That is not gonna happen anymore. So the area that I'm gonna put the water restriction on, I'm also gonna be working closely with John. He is already aware of the situation. You know, so anytime there's any kind of involvement in anything is in regards to a fire, we're already going to have tankers all set up. There is a tanker team in Massachusetts that I do have, and we'll know. So, you know, we'll have the tankers, and then if we really need water, there's drafting that we can utilize. Also, you can go out of that area and get water like you would normally be able to. So, again, so it's just going to affect, you know, most of Orchard all the way up to Hoosick Valley High School. And then it's going to drop down into, you know, down Leonard Street to Overlook Terrace, Tower, Woods Drive, and Arnold. So it's kind of a small area in there. You know, and again, it's only going to be for a week until I get this thing drained out, get it repaired, and then get it back online and get it filled back up.
Yeah, I mean, you never know the unforeseen, though, until you start doing the job, too.
You don't, and so that's, that's what we're up against. So, I looked into having a tanker, so there's Henshaw that's out there, that they can bring an 18-wheeler and stick that up there, but in all honesty, it's a 7,000-gallon tanker, so it's really, when you're talking a fire event, 7,000 gallons is 7 minutes.
Right, so if I owned a home in that area, I'd be very concerned with this taking place. So your plan is to identify a plan, which maybe would include surrounding communities to support if needed, and you'll have that documented?
Yes.
and
Yep.
Available for homeowners to be able to feel more secure?
Yes. Yeah, no, all this is, we've been in discussion, and John, our chief, is going to have that, that's all going to be handled beforehand, before we go out and do this. So at any extent, if there's a fire, I think the tanker's going to get called immediately.
John, I have a general question. Now that we have you here in the hot seat, we know that infrastructure is a big deal these days. Adams
Essentially, does where we need to go. It's of where we need to go with the infrastructure. The problem with the infrastructure is money, as we all know. So essentially, for me, to maintain the distribution system, just the piping, we're looking at about $260,000 I need to put away a year just to maintain that. We all know that we utilize SRF funding to do projects, but we also know that with SRF funding, there are loans that we need to pay back with some forgiveness, correct? And so, it's hard to maintain the assets and maintain a reasonable price to our customers. And so, we're a disadvantaged community, so that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. The distribution itself, so I implemented an asset management whenever we have a water break. Whenever we have anything go on where I go in and see a pipe, we do a scoring now. We've been doing that for probably about 3 years to help with our asset management. So then we can actually get in, look in the pipe, hands-on. We do a grading of the pipe. We do a thickness check, tuberculation inside. I have to say that our pipes are really, some of them are old, they're old, but they are in excellent condition. And I think that's, essentially attributed to the characteristics of the water. Our pH is really good.
We don't have acidic water, correct?
We do not. So our pH is around 8.1 to 8.2. So, that's excellent. We do inject phosphate. It helps to maintain and coat these pipes, and they really are in really good shape. I'd have to say, overall, the biggest thing with our piping is the size of our piping. So when Adams was originally made, it started out downtown, and then it grew out up in the hills. And some of these old pipes, we have a lot of 4-inch pipe, which there's only 2 foundries in the United States that still make 4-inch pipe. You just do not put it in the ground. So we have a lot of 4-inch pipe that needs to be replaced. There's 2 sides of that. The 4-inch pipe is not good for fire protection because it's a 4-inch pipe, right? But on the other hand, it is excellent for water quality because now you don't have water stagnation. Again, that is something that we look at with our hydraulic analysis. We can tell the water age in any given part of our system so that we know, where these water stagnation problems may be occurring. But again, our 4-inch pipes, a lot of these small pipes, they're excellent for water quality. But, we do have work. This new equipment now, these stations, VFD drives, they only last 15 years. So it's hard to maintain, to do asset management with the amount of funds that we have.
In terms of major replacing huge sections of pipe, you don't see any like major capital outlays, like replacing a roof on a building, for example?
We do. So we do have some piping that we need to get replaced, and that is in our master plan.
Okay.
So it's there, but, and also some of the larger pipes we're looking at, right on our main thoroughfare here, that's a 14-inch pipe. We're not looking to replace that. We would actually be looking to reline it, which is cheaper than replacing it. So there definitely is, lines that we need to replace that's in our plan. But again, that's based off of an engineering calculation, right? So it says, well, that pipe is only good for 100 years, which is basically what they say that all the piping is. But when you get in there and you are doing correct asset management, we can assess what that pipe looks like, and that's what we're doing. Right, so now when we have a pipe and they're gonna say, hey, this needs to replace, it's 100 years, I can pull all of my asset management data and say, hey, this pipe is good. There's only been 2 water breaks on this pipe, and that's how we assess that and we manage asset management.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on, source water protection plan. This is a big thing. So I think everybody nowadays, we see it on the news, protecting our source. We are lucky that our wells are in Cheshire. So we have what's called a Zone 1 and a Zone 2, and that's basically the recharging area of our wells. There is a water district protection overlay that the town of Cheshire has made. And that protects our wells in addition to their wells. So we last had this evaluation done in 2007. I just had it redone, and essentially what this does is independent group comes in and tries to assess the risks to our source. And so we just had that done. We are reviewing the data and looking on how better to protect our resource, which is our water supply. I think, what we'll probably be doing is we looked at where a risk could possibly come from for contamination. We looked at people that have tanks in the ground. Primarily, the primary risk for our water in Cheshire, as it may be, is sewage infiltration. There's a lot of, they don't have, everybody's on sewer, septic systems. So I think pretty soon we're going to we're rolling out, I'm working on a grant right now to get it out and to send educational flyers, mailings to Cheshire residents on how to maintain their septic systems properly. And, I want to get together times when there's like because chemicals are a big thing. I think we all seen PFAS. If these things get flushed down into their septic systems, they leach into the ground, and this is how source water gets contaminated. So this is our effort to educate the residents and help to avoid this problem. So we're right in the middle of that. That evaluation just got done. Like I said, we're also going to be doing that this summer. They also made some recommendations on things that they thought we could do to better protect the public water supply, our public water supply down there. So we're reviewing that, and I've already implemented a couple of things that was on there as a recommendation. This now being the second recommendation, we had to do this when the American Infrastructure Water Act came. EPA required me to do a risk assessment and submit that. So we do that every 5 years in addition to this source water protection plan.
Is it possible that we could obtain a copy of that?
Absolutely.
I'd like to take a look at it.
Yep.
Because I know fertilizers are a big concern.
You are 100% correct. That is on the list of things that we need to educate residents on how to properly dispose of. Roundup, I think, was one of the things that's going on, you know, with contamination. And it's just, you know, simple and it's innocent. People just use this and they don't realize that it not only it can affect our well, but primarily it can affect their wells as well.
Yeah, is there any public announcements about, what is it, Roundup is glycosamine, or it's a very, very, very toxic, and people just use it, you know, put it down like water?
Yeah.
And it literally gets into the stomach and then creates leaky gut. I mean, there's a whole
Yeah,
bunch of nasty.
we're lucky, you know. So we're in a confined aquifer. So
Yeah.
you know, we're not as susceptible to you know, surface contamination.
Okay.
That was evaluated, you know. Then this is just an extra step, a precaution to maintain, you know, the systems. I think the biggest one that we're going to be looking at is, you know, that I am interested in is the septic system at the mobile home in Cheshire. So eventually I want to try to get together, sit down with the board in Cheshire, and there's a bunch of recommendations that are in there that I'd like to try to move along with the board in Cheshire. But yes, Roundup is one of them. So when all these chemicals come out, you know, we test for them. Whenever something pops up, we'll test for them. Unregulated contaminant monitoring rule is something that's going on. So we're in the 5th round, which is called UCMR 5. We're going to be testing for all that, all this upcoming stuff. So we already tested for PFAS. That's a big one. The district, we tested prior to the state of Massachusetts even having MCL on it. We've actually tested a couple times now that I actually have a waiver, so it was no detect for PFAS. The upcoming contaminants that I think we're going to be seeing that I've got to submit samples on for UCMR to the EPA is going to be lithium. And then we are going to be sampling for a whole bunch more of PFAS.
Yeah, because our wastewater treatment plant is going to be under strict regulations.
Correct.
EPA wants to test it inbound and outbound.
Correct, right.
Because it's
Well,
not
because you
being,
can't have something coming out, it's water, right?
they're also determining that it could be created during the treatment process too. Because what some of the preliminary research is showing is that the PFAS that goes into the system and enters the plant is higher actually when it comes out, which is baffling everybody. So they're trying to determine what the source is.
Right. So this is a big thing that the EPA is tackling, and you know, I'm sure that you guys, that you are addressing with these remodels and everything, is to bring us into the new regulations that are coming downstream. So we in the water are doing the same exact thing.
Yeah, your geological is a concern too with heavy metals and things, and some substrata has that type of
It is, yep. Yeah, our biggest issue, you know, if I would say it was an issue, would be iron and manganese. They're still well below the limits, and we also inject phosphate, which sequesters iron and manganese, and it also protects pipes from leaching ferrous metals, which is going to bring me into what I'm going to talk about next. So, you know, we're fairly protected based on the pH and injection of phosphates. Okay, so that's going to bring us to the EPA service line inventory. So EPA originally made what was called the LCR, lead and copper rule, in I believe it was 1991. Water departments, public water systems were required to start testing for lead and copper concentrations within water. EPA has since rewritten that. So now we are evolving into what's called the LCRR, lead and copper rule revision. With that, you know, the Biden administration has really pushed this. You're seeing it everywhere on the news about getting the lead out. It is, you know, it got a lot of support for this. So in October 16th of 2024, every public water system in the United States is required to submit to the EPA, and for us, Mass DEP, the material makeup of every connection to the public water system. When I took over in 2018, that was probably one of my first things, was to start gaining data to prepare us for this deadline. So at this point, you know, what I did was I looked at all of our connections. So the town of Adams we have 3,033 connections. Lead service lines were installed primarily from 1800 to the 1940s. Looking over all of our building structures that made 255 commercial structures within Adams may have a lead service line, and 1,803 residences. So they were all built in then. So then what we started doing was a lot of people, I think you may see, they're going to be creating websites and asking residents to submit what their lines look like, right? But I really wanted to take that out of the residents' hands and get that data on electronic form. So we started acquiring that data then. At this current time, we have no lead service lines in the town of Adams. I went through our historical data from when we started sampling for lead and copper, and the data that I had, I could not find that we ever had listed a lead service line in the town then.
That doesn't make sense, though, based on what you said earlier.
Well, that was a time when they would put them in. It doesn't mean that people put them in. There's one thing that kind of helped us with this. North Adams is similar to this too. When we tap a pipe in Adams, we tap the pipe, if you're looking at it, at 3 and 9 o'clock, meaning the pipe is going straight into the house, right? It's parallel with the surface. A lot of communities don't do that. A lot of communities tap their pipes, you know, maybe at like 10, 10:30, and 2, which means they need to have the lead to flex to go in. So something that simple protected us from lead service lines. And so looking through,
We used galvanized iron. What did we use instead?
Correct. So all the lines at this point right now, my data is saying we have 2,471 copper lines in this community and 385 galvanized. So I'm not done with my work yet. It's still in progress, but we have a lot of data already ahead of us. So we are well prepared to take this project on, you know. So we just don't see, and even going, like I said, so long before I was here looking at the historic data, I didn't see that there was lead lines either, you know, in our historic data. And so we can, when I start this project, so I submitted an application for SRF funding to get this project started, you know, all this paperwork that needs to be submitted to EPA on October 16th, or excuse me, when did I put that in? It was January 10th, I put the SRF application in. As we all know, we need to have a local appropriation for the funding. Since then, I had all of my paperwork in, it was sitting there, we were just waiting local appropriation. They changed it because this is not an unfunded mandate, it's funded. EPA has funded it and infused money into the state revolving fund. So it's a funded mandate. We all know how the underfunded mandates work. This is a funded mandate.
Fun.
It's a funded mandate. So which is fantastic. Since then, make my life easier. They've turned this into a grant process. So since they had all of our information in there, the DEP has a meeting on April 5th, so I would expect by April 6th I'll probably have my grant to move forward and finish the rest of this work. So by May, I'm going to be starting this project to finish this up. We're going to be
What's that amount, John?
50,000, which is very small compared to other communities because we have an abundance of information already. Like I said, we've been preparing for this since 2018. So what we're going to be doing is, you know, we're going to be looking at records. We can rule out any place where we put a new main in, if it's a new house, you know, plumbing permits, anything that we will gain access from. In large, there's a lot of work to do with this, which is why I'm going to be utilizing our engineering company. There is, you know, to do this data, there's 25 data entries per service. We have 3,033, so there's about 75,000 data points that need to be entered into the spreadsheet to submit to the EPA by October 16th of 2024. So I'm hopeful to be starting that in May and ending the entire job, give or take, within 9 months. So then what will happen is communities over 10,000 have to, I have to create an ID for every single connection. Everybody here, except for Jay, will have an ID in Adams that will never change. So this ID that I'm gonna assign that house will never change in that data, so our customers will be able to look at that and see essentially what their services are made up of. And so all that information is gonna be, you know, I'm gonna be starting it pretty soon.
So that information will be accessible by the homeowner? You just indicated that they'll be able to see this data. How will they be able to see this data?
I haven't actually started working on that yet. So people over 10,000 are required to make it accessible via the internet. I just need to make it accessible. So what that means is, you know, I haven't addressed the point because I've got a lot of other stuff going on, whether I'm going to make this a live database that our residents can look at, or if they can just call and request the information. However, like I said, the EPA is going to get an ID number. They're not going to know houses. They're not going to know who owns the houses. They're just going to see an ID number that'll never change ever from here on out. So we're going to assign ID numbers to every residence that the district supplies with water, and so that everybody can kind of track what their services are made of.
Okay. Any questions, further questions?
Just a comment, based on what you're saying tonight, and earlier discussions of people of Adams who are on town water. As I understand it, it's some of the highest quality water in the country, which means that if people don't need to buy bottled water because
The second least contaminated water in Berkshire County, based on all the, when I do all my sampling, the contaminants, you know, Great Barrington, I think some community in Great Barrington was the highest, you know, least contaminated, and Adams and Cheshire tied for second of the least contaminated water in Berkshire County. So, you know, our water is excellent. pH is 8.2. I think you can go and spend $5, $4 and buy 8.2 Fuji water or whatever it may be, but it literally comes out of our tap. I think everybody just thinks, it's public water, it's horrible, but, you know, public water is extremely regulated. There's a person that you can call and ask, that'd be me, to discuss anytime at what the water is. You can go to the district, find out everything that we've tested for the last umpteen years. You can go on the internet and find it. We actually have it on our website. You know, so you can't do that with bottled water. It comes from wherever. You can look at that bottled water and it may have 10 different watersheds where it could have come from.
plus the contamination from the plastic that it's in.
Correct. So, you know, here in Adams, it's only coming from one source.
Thank you.
No, we're fortunate, very fortunate to have the water we do.
Okay, thank you, John. Really
All right.
appreciate it when you come to the board and update us on the water district.
Excellent.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jim.
guys.
Okay, one additional item, which was discussed earlier this evening in the public open comment. Vice Chairman Hoyt sent me a correspondence, but it's very similar to the public comment session. The legislation was filed by Representative Barrett to expand the district to the town borders. The number is H.2032. So after receiving the information from the public comment, I was at that meeting back in 2008 that I would like to have on the next board meeting's agenda to discuss the legislation that was filed by Representative Barrett, and what that does mean for the residents that are currently outside the water district. Seems to be a lot of inquiries happening, so for information that won't bite the Prudential Committee, of course. Okay, moving on to subcommittee and liaison reports. Howard?
Yeah, the Board of Health is looking at helping apartments in Adams recycle. Because I understand it today, they're not actually formally recycling the plastics and glass. And so the Board of Health has an outreach to the different apartment owners of the best way to do that, get the departments to be involved.
Okay. Joe?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Announcements and go to the order. Just to let everyone know that this Saturday, March 18th, there's a celebration for the completion of the stair restoration project at the Adams Memorial Library. The ribbon cutting ceremony is at 10:30. Light refreshments and tours of Memorial Hall to follow. So if you're free, and we have a picture of it right here, it's really an amazing upgrade that's been funded by a foundation. So again, that's Saturday morning, this Saturday morning, March 18th, 10:30, Adams Free Library, 92 Park Street in Adams. And if you're available, it'd be great to see you. Stop by and attend this event. Announcements and go to the order continued. Howard, do you have anything?
Yeah, shout out to the DPW for the amazing plowing and road clearing job they did for this double whammy storm.
Okay. Howard? Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, a couple of things. Last Saturday, the girls were having a game scheduled because they deserved their right to play in a home court, and the gym was leaking. So the team from Georgetown, which is up in Essex County, up near the New Hampshire border, came. So they drive in and they're told, well, we can't play the game here because our roof's leaking. So the game was transferred to Drury High School, and it's quite embarrassing. We're still paying on a bond for this school, and numerous leaks in the roof, and I don't know, I just couldn't really believe it, the girls won, but it was a hard-fought game. And going to a lot of the games, I noticed that when you're in your home court, your perception when you shoot, you know how to line up, and the girls weren't hitting the threes, and I'm not saying that was the reason. It was a well-played game, but it was quite embarrassing.
And I agree, and I was on the school board. What happened was, just briefly, we had redone the roof of the basketball, of the gym, the pool, and the auditorium was done several years prior to the renovation, because we received a really good reimbursement. So I'm not sure the number of years, but anyways, I agree with you, it is an embarrassment. And so we expect to hear from the superintendent, so that's expected to come our way.
Okay, and the last thing too, I'd seen some articles in the Eagle about dam safety. I think just to bring it to our attention, I know, John, you're familiar with the Fish Street Dam up on Fish Street. That's totally filled with silt. It's a big dam, and it's purging on the sides now, and it's just a concern, because if that ever let go, there would be a deluge of, and it seems that there's money there. Have you ever visited the Fish Street Dam?
I have. It's already been inspected by the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. I'll have Mr. Coughlin report out, but we think we might be able to get funds in order to have that remediated. Ownership is an issue. It's registered to a firm either in Bermuda or the Bahamas.
Yeah.
I believe it was probably once owned by W.R. Grace, because I believe that's hooked up to the aqueduct system that runs underneath Russell Field and into the Grace Mill or
owned it, that owner that I know. And there's also in for drought hazard things, but it needs to be looked at. So that's all I have.
We'll have an agenda item with Eamon when we have more
yeah, he'll
information.
report on
Definitely.
that for you.
All right, good. Okay, thank you. That's it. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous. The